Hey guys, welcome to the High Lifter Proving Grounds here in Louisiana. Now Polaris brought me down here to ride their entire lineup of High Lifter models, and that means one thing: it's time to get muddy. Let's go. Treatment gets these machines ready for the mud, and it is available on 3 different Polaris nameplates, both the single and 2-row versions of the Ranger XP1000 and RZR XP1000 side by sides, and then there is the Sportsman High Lifter, which can be had as either an 850 or an XP1000. All 3 of the units run Outlaw 2 tires designed by High Lifter. They are 29.5-inch tires on the RZR and Sportsman, while the Ranger uses 28-inch tires. Now, unique bumpers are mounted on the front and the rear, meant to keep things up out of the mud, while each of the front bumpers also contains a home for a high-mounted winch that is part of the High Lifter package. New half doors have been added to the Rangers with a 1-inch drain space at the bottom to make sure water can run out of the cab. Underneath, 13.5 inches of ground clearance are available from the Sportsman and Ranger, while the RZR sits a full 15 inches off the ground. Arched A-arms along with high clearance rear radius rods also help to keep essential gear from dragging in the ruts. Suspension travel remains at 11 inches for the Ranger, 21 inches for the RZR, and 7.4 and 6.7 inches on the Sportsman from front to back. Everything that needs to breathe and vent on these machines, including the engine, transmission, and differentials, all can do so thanks to a high-mounted snorkel system, and additionally the Sportsman gets a high-mounted radiator to keep it out of the mud. Gearing in the transmission of all these machines has also been made lower to make sure that more torque is getting to the ground at lower RPM. And to make sure that each one of these machines can handle from 100 to 200 pounds of extra weight thanks to caked mud, each one of them has a stiffer spring rate than stock. So what does it cost to park a High Lifter in your garage? Well, the Ranger XP1000 High Lifter sells for $19,999 in the US and $24,999 in Canada. The RZR XP1000 High Lifter will sell for a little bit more at $21,699 in the US and $27,099 here in Canada. Finally, that Sportsman XP1000 High Lifter model sells for $13,999 in the US and $17,499 in Canada. Okay, so we just got back in from our big morning ride, and first initial impressions. Big one has to be these tires. You know, they got those big fat paddles on them, and digging through the deepest mud holes that they have out here at the proving ground. The tires did really good. Every single time a machine got stuck, it was almost always because it got high centered, because the ruts are just so deep out here. It wasn't because the tires were losing grip. And on a mud machine, I think this might be needless to say, but the most important thing are the tires, and these ones do not disappoint. And that's just so apparent when you just crawl through this deep, thick mud. You know, guys love to hit mud going super fast, but you can just nicely crawl through it, and that really shows you that these tires have real grip. You don't need momentum to get through this stuff. So this morning I rode in a RZR and this Ranger right here, and you know, the big differences between the two, the biggest one is just the seating position. The RZR, you're a little lower, the seat is almost tilted back a little bit, you know, it has a much more aggressive, sporty feeling seating position. The Ranger, you're very upright, you know, very 90 degrees, because this is a utility machine, it's not really meant for the mud. So, you know, just in terms of interior comfort, I would definitely take a RZR for a long day of trail riding, just because it has a little bit more of a sense like it's kind of hugging you in there. But again, this Ranger is a utility machine, so what do you expect? And that said, there are even different seats in this High Lifter version, which comes with nice accent stitching and a little more padding, a little more cushion than the standard Ranger XP1000 has, and it's quite nice actually. I like these seats. Talking about power, there's plenty of it here. Now, we spent most of our day in low gear, and when you're in low, you just have really good, down low torque. The belt engagement feels nice and smooth. Now, for this Ranger XP1000 and for the RZR XP1000, Polaris took the newest transmission out of the Turbo S, and they put it in both of these models to make it more durable. They want to make sure that you're not out there, blowing your transmission and blowing belts constantly, because who wants that? And on our ride this morning, no one did blow a belt. We did have one little issue. Our high lifter model did actually overheat and it went into limp mode, and that's kind of expected when you're mudding. You're just getting so much crap up on the rad, you don't let it do its job.
It's got an engine light. I'm in limp mode. Engine light overheating.
Running into the mud, and you can see it's just coated.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But the nice thing is Polaris does include this really easy to remove front grill cover, the lower front grill cover, so you pop that off there and you can get right to the rad and you can clean it right up. So yeah, low gear, lots of power here. These 1000cc models, you never feel like you're lacking. And then even in low, you can build up a bit of speed, and when we're not running through those deep holes and kind of twisting, winding through the trails, low feels nice. You can get a little speed going. It's not like you feel like you're really held back by it. And it's a little bit best of both worlds. It allows you to get that low end torque, but if you do want to open it up a little bit, you're not high speed stuff, but between mud holes, you don't want to shift it high every time, and low allows you to build up enough speed to have some fun. Now the power steering here is pretty typical Polaris. It's really kind of over boosted. It's quite light, but with these bigger tires on it, these big meaty tires, you do actually feel a little bit more in the wheel when you're turning. And I think because they're just so heavy and there's so much tire there, that actually gives you more feedback than on a standard XP1000 model. And I actually found myself really liking that. When you're down in those holes and you're riding the ruts, sometimes you want to straddle the ruts if they're a little too deep looking, or you got to jump up out of the side of the ruts or something. That's when you really want to feel that feedback in the wheel. So what about the other mud specific stuff? How did it work? Well, the doors did a great job. I mean, they're nice and thick and they're quite tall, and they really protect you from a lot of the stuff that's flying up. And then they put these drains on the bottom, there's about an inch down there. They're lifted up above the floor so that when the water comes in, it rushes right back out. And we were taking water right over the hood, we had the entire thing filled up. Our water bottles were floating around. And the second you come up out of that hole, the water whoosh right out the door and it's gone. So, that was definitely a smart design and a good call on Polaris's and High Lifter's part to design these doors. And then there's those arched A-arms. Now, you don't really feel them while you're riding, of course, but following other machines, you can actually see how when they're in these deep mud ruts, the A-arms come in and then whoop, they jump right up and over the little rut there. They're just perfect, and that makes a big difference. One less piece of your machine dragging through the mud. And speaking of dragging through the mud, another cool thing with the high lifters is that Polaris actually accounts for about 100 to 200 pounds of extra weight on all of these models just in mud, because it only takes a couple holes until you're totally caked, and that adds a lot of weight. So they actually calibrated the suspension to account for that. So they're taking into account the rider and the driver, but then also all of this mud. Now the high lifter model here doesn't have any extra suspension travel. It's still the 11 inches that's standard on the Ranger XP1000, but it's more than enough, for a utility model. That's a lot of travel, and when you do hit the trail and start to pick up some speed, it ferries you along in relative comfort and does a really nice job of soaking up the trail. Not quite as good as the RZR though. The RZR, when you open it up, it really soaks up the trail. But they did actually switch out the shocks on the RZR. So they used to have the Walker Evans needle shocks, and for this unit they just use regular piggybacks because the needles are more about high speed. And you know, these machines are not about high speed. Most mudding, you're in low and you're crawling along. So they actually switched out the shocks for units that were, you know, a little more tailored towards the slow speed stuff and not the high speed compression moments. Well, I think it's safe to say that we definitely got some real mud on this machine today, and that's what these high lifters are all about. Honestly, the fact that you can walk into a dealership and buy this package already put together for you, go out and hit the trails, you don't have to worry about water getting into any of your electronics or your differentials or any of that important stuff. It's really quite amazing, and there's just about nothing that Polaris and Highlifter haven't thought of. If you love the mud, you should definitely look into one of these Highlifter models. And as always, guys, make sure you hit subscribe to TFL Off-Road, come back to the channel for the latest news, views, and real-world reviews. See ya!